All right. Well, hello and welcome to today's webinar. This will be on updating rates with a focus within using the rate wizard in our rate manager to build out your rates for this upcoming season or future years to come. We'll go ahead and record this session. So anyone that's arriving late or misses this, we'll go ahead and get them recording afterwards. We'll go ahead and start in this slide deck here, and then we'll probably jump into the system and show you a few screens that you probably are familiar with. If not, hopefully some new information, and hopefully everyone learns a little bit and maybe has a little bit of fun as well. All right, so to begin with, let's go ahead and start with an introduction. My name is Josh Kennedy. I work here at RMS as a senior configuration specialist. I've been with the company for just about 10 years. Prior to that, quite a bit of hospitality experience, call center sales, banquets, casinos, etc. I'm joined today by another colleague of mine from the Learning Services and Implementation team here, Lindsay Hansen. She is probably a voice you'll recognize if you've taken any of our RMS University courses. So without further ado, Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Hi guys, Lindsay here. Like Josh said, I am one of the implementation specialists here at RMS. I bring with me about 25 years of hospitality experience, and since 2009, I have used RMS as my primary software for reservations, and have been behind the scenes for a number of years on top of that. So bring with me a vast wealth of knowledge and hope to share a lot of that with you today.
Thanks, Lindsay.
So I actually have a question for everyone, and by a show of hands, who knows the 4 steps to creating a rate? And once we have all of our hands, raised or lowered or whatnot, we'll see who knows what. So I see a few hands coming up. Looks like we've got more and more, which is awesome, super exciting. I love this. All right. So it looks like we have a good handful of people who know those 4, but for the remainder that are a little questionable, let's go ahead and take a look at what those 4 steps are. So we will begin with our rate type. So the rate type is really a charge description, and this is going to identify to you a particular set of pricing. So it's basically the name, your daily, weekly, monthly, so on, right? Next, we have our rate period, and this is going to be the period that determines the date range that we're setting prices for. So this could be something like maybe a peak season or an off season, maybe a shoulder season. Maybe you have a special event or a holiday that happens and you want to take note of that, or your prices adjust during that time. Your rate period will determine that. The third piece is what we like to call the rate table, and this is where we determine the price that we are going to calculate. So think of it as you put all your money on the table. And then lastly, we have our rate lookup. And the rate lookup essentially takes the first 3, your rate type, your rate period, and your rate table, and it links it to your category. Now, your category could be your room type, maybe your site type, whatever you've chosen to name it there at your property, and it makes it a fully bookable site. So let's actually do this. Josh, if you don't mind, can we hop into RMS and look at that rate manager and kind of see how we can utilize some of these to build our rates?
Yeah, sure thing. For those viewers at home, just keep a little mental snapshot of these 4 steps. This may come into play here in a little bit. All right, so now that we're in the system, there's a couple different ways you can access the rate manager. Now, the important piece is having access to that rate manager. So if you don't see an icon at the top that looks like a line graph, you could have customized your icons and maybe change the order in which you might find that icon. You can also go through the left-hand side menu to find that if you can't find the icon underneath our charts menu. and the rate manager. We'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the rate manager. But again, if you don't see it here, it's probably best to check with your system administrator because you may not have access to that feature. For those that do, they probably recognize the rate manager and they can go ahead and access it as needed. Now, to make this screen a little bit more user-friendly, I think I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this left-hand side menu and refresh this screen, hopefully making it a little bit easier on you to see what I'm talking about here. Depending on whether or not you are a single property or a multi-property database, you might have a screen that you are welcomed into when you come into the rate manager. That would be for initialization options. That right there will allow you to select a property, a specific date, maybe even a view type, room type, channel, or rate type, whatever you're comfortable with. So you can always choose what's best for you. If you are the single property, we'll just drop you right in to the last view that you used within the rate manager. And you will be on today's date, as we can see here. Now, as we go through this rate manager chart, we'll go ahead and we'll start on this left-hand side, and going from top to bottom, you'll notice all of the different rental types. We'll see things like our rooms, cottages, sites, whatever your property offers. And coming along the top here, from left to right, we have the date range. And again, starts with today, and it's going to show you a certain number of days, depending on how you want to go ahead and view this. This is user dependent, so each user can have their own, but you can alter this view by simply clicking these little icons here to go ahead and adjust how many days you see within the rate manager chart. And if you like, you can always go through our options and customize that a little bit more if you choose to put in some number other than what you see here is defaulted, 14, 28, 42, 56. We're going to go ahead and turn our focus just a little bit above the date line, and we're going to see some icons within this rate manager chart going from left to right. And the one that we're going to go ahead and take a look at right off the bat is this rates icon. The rates icon produces us a list that's very similar to what Lindsay just talked about. Rate types, rate periods, rate tables, and rate lookups, those 4 steps to rates. This will allow us to go ahead and view or manage our existing, in this case, rate types or rate periods. Rate tables, where you can go ahead and see that pricing that Lindsay talked about, and rate lookups. This will be that combination of the 3 of these areas along with a specific rental type. So if you ever need to manage or edit them, you can do so here from this rates dropdown. You can also create new ones here in this section as well, but we'll show you maybe a more convenient area within the rate wizard that we'll go ahead and do most of that work within. So as we go through and we take a look at this rate manager chart, you probably already have rates in existence within the system. So if we go ahead and we look at any of these different rental types by clicking the plus button, we'll expand to see our rate types that we offer. Within each of these different rate types, we may have a specific rate amount that might be different. We may even use what we call derived rates. This little chain link indicates here that this OTA rate, or online travel agent rate, is derived from our best available rate. So that's all set up already. So you may already have this existing setup, but you need to build out maybe future dates, or maybe adjust your existing dates for seasonality reasons, peak season, summer season versus shoulder season, slower areas. So depending on what rate types you already use, you might want to go ahead and use the existing ones that you have. And what we can do is put our mouse right over that rate type description or name and click it. And it's going to go ahead and open up what we'll reference as a little rate lookup for this specific, in this case, 1-bedroom cottage room type. And what we can see from this screen is how far out your rates are valid. In this case, we have the use of a rate period. Lindsay kind of mentioned it, that the rate period is going to be that duration of time that your rates would be good for. And you can go ahead and have multiple rate periods here in this screen. And if we wanted to, we might even have a scenario where you utilize what we call the all year round rate period, which more or less makes your rates and that rate amount that you have set against this rate table valid for an indefinite period of time. So if you ever did use the all year round rate period, you can still utilize what we'll be showing you today by the use of maybe a rate period, because we'll always go ahead and calculate a reservation rate quote based off the smallest period first and then work outwards to produce that quote. So as we go through and we look at this screen here, Lindsay, would you be able to maybe show us how we could build out maybe a summer season or make sure that we make our rates valid for another time frame?
Yeah, I would love to, Josh. If you could, would you mind clicking on that little wizard hat or shark fin icon that you see there? Yep. So that's going to be our new rate wizard. To me, it kind of reminds me of Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, but I could be dating myself. Who knows? So from this screen, you'll see that we have two different sections. We have the top part there that talks about our rate structure, and then we have the bottom part that talks about the rate type selection. Now, the top part is going to allow you two different options. We have the OTA rate and we have our direct rate. Now, for this specific example, we are going to be utilizing the OTA rate. And as you can see in the little notation down below, that using this OTA will then allow it to connect with your online booking engine. So keep in mind that there are going to be some of these little notations here for you to kind of help keep you on the straight and narrow as we go through this. So these OTA rates are not only going to be available to your online system, but they're also available to your in-house staff as well. So like I mentioned, for this example, we're going to select that OTA rate structure, and then we can go ahead and navigate to the bottom section and select our rate type. Now here we can have a couple options as well, and we can either utilize an existing rate type, which keep in mind that these are going to be interchangeable. We can utilize the same rate type over and over and over for multiple categories without it causing any issues, which is the nice part about creating just a single one. It becomes interchangeable. Or if for whatever reason it doesn't exist in our dropdown, we can always create something new by clicking on the create a new or create a rate type button just below. Now, once we've made our selections, we can go ahead and select the next button up on the top right-hand side, and we'll be moved into a new screen. Now, from this new screen, we are being asked to select the specific category in which we would like to set the best available rate in this case. And we can see a summary of what's happening as we go through this four-step process on the far left-hand side. So again, just like that rate type, if we have multiple categories or multiple room types that need to have that same price, we can tick that box here and tick multiples here to include them and kind of knock out two birds with one stone. Again, working more efficiently and a little bit more effectively. So once again, we've made our selections, we simply click that next button and we're brought into our rate periods. Again, you can see where we're advancing on the left with the summary, and it's showing us that we've completed 2 steps thus far. Now, with our rate period, we have what we have available. This means that the best available rate for the 1-bedroom cottage hasn't yet been set for any of the periods that we see here. So if we want to go ahead and set this for 2025, we simply tick the box next to it, and we can advance to the next step. However, if the period that we're looking for doesn't exist, we can simply click on that Add New Period button on the top right-hand side of the grid and add in this new time frame. Keeping in mind our description, which is a mandatory field, does also need to be unique. So this will be for 2024 for the summer. The next key component to this is we want to set the dates in which we are determining 2024 summer. So when we click here, just like when we book reservations, our start date or our arrival date is going to be on the left-hand side. So we're saying that from May 31st of 2024 until our end date on the right or our departure date on the right, September 1st of 2024 will be our summer. When we're ready to save this, we simply click apply, and we've now set this new summer period. Now, there's some other options here that are completely optional. You don't have to set these because we can reinforce them elsewhere. But if you're like me and you like a little color in your life, you can assign a specific color for this rate period that'll show elsewhere in the system. Not mandatory, but it's optional. You can also set a minimum reservation period within this time as well. So if during the summer you do require a minimum of 2-night stays, you can set this here. Otherwise, you can reinforce this elsewhere. The same applies to the cancellation policy and whether or not we want to allow discounts during that time frame. So once we've made our selections, we can simply click Save and Exit. And then we have this option that will appear behind the scenes, and we can now select that 2024 summer. Once we've made that selection, I'll let you guess, we click Next. And we can advance to the next section, which is our rate table. Now, I'm going to talk about the first two pieces, and then I'll let Josh take over. But we have a couple different options. Now, I've mentioned before that our rate types as well as our rate periods are interchangeable. The same goes for our rate tables. So the nice piece is if you've already created a certain rate table in the past and you like the way it works, you like the pricing, and you simply want to reutilize it for a different time frame and a different period, you can absolutely do that by ticking the box for Use Existing Rate and then selecting from the dropdown the specific rate table that's already been created in your system. So for this example, we can grab the 2024 one bed. Now you'll notice down below, everything is grayed out. That simply means we are utilizing what's already existing. So we are allowing the system to utilize the rules and prices we've already put into place. Now, if this is kinda what you want, but not really, maybe you want to up the pricing a little bit, then what we can do is that center option where it's kind of a 2-in-1. So we then create a new based on existing. So just like the use existing, we locate the rate table that we want to utilize. However, we give it a new name. And again, keeping in mind that those names and descriptions do need to be unique. Now, we recommend, like what Josh did here, is including both the room type as well as the period, just to help, again, keep you in a straight line and keep you on the straight and narrow and keep everything cohesive. Now, the nice part about this is we can update our rates. So maybe that $200 a night, maybe it was a great price, but we're seeing that we can get a little bit more. So maybe we up it to $225. Well, we type in $225, and once we complete that and move to the next cell, the system will flood fill that, which is great. But maybe Friday and Saturday still need to be a higher price. Easy enough as typing over and replacing the information. And I like Josh's way. He's like, nope, we're going to get an extra $50 on the weekend. Perfect. So if this is what we like and we like what we see, we can simply go ahead and save this. And we've now allocated our new best available rate for the 2024 season of summer for our 1-bedroom at a slightly inflated price. Perfect. So Josh, do you want to take us through this screen a little bit more now that we've expanded this rate table view and have a couple other options?
Yeah, definitely. Quick question though for you, Lindsay. How come all of this is all here already, like our dynamic pricing rules already built in?
Yes.
And looks like our package component that we utilize and deposit rules.
These are all great questions. So the reason that we are seeing all of these extra pieces and all of these different rules that have already been set is because of the fact that when we created this rate table, we created it based off of something that already existed. So all of those rules when it comes to dynamic pricing, packages, deposits, your additionals, Maybe you use housekeeping. Maybe you have early check-in and check-out fees. Maybe you have a no-show fee. Whatever those components are that you've added to that already existing will flow over to the new one when you utilize that option of create new based on an existing. The only caveat is when you're creating the new based on the existing, you can then go ahead and alter any aspect of it.
Perfect. Like requiring a 2-night minimum on a Saturday arrival as well.
Exactly.
Perfect. So as we go through, we mentioned how if you are copying from an existing table, those rules will flow through to the new rate table you've created. So if you did have any packages on here, you can obviously see that they'll come along as well. If needed here, you can adjust them if it is varying per rental type. Your deposit rules all flow through as such, and you don't need to make any adjustments or anything like that. We'll also see any additional person pricing come through as well. So definitely makes things a lot easier when you're building rates out in bulk. Once you've created the rule, everything flows through as long as you're doing it appropriately by copying that existing table. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at maybe a scenario where I've gone in through the rental type, like the 1-bedroom cottage, and I've created it, but now I need to create rates for another rental type. Let's go ahead and we'll take a look at how another icon within this rate manager might become of use. So back up at the top right, you'll notice a very similar looking wizard hat icon. Same one that we saw within that rate lookup screen for our 1-bedroom cottage. Except this time when we come into the rate wizard, none of that stuff's going to be pre-populated for us as far as the rate type or the rental type that we're looking to create a rate on. So sometimes as you go through, you may think you're building out the rate correctly and you're continuing to build out your best available rate, and you don't want to create a new one, but you can't find it here in this existing rate types section. Chances are it's either one of two things. Either you don't have access to that rate type, which is unlikely if you've been building it, or maybe on the rate structure, you've toggled it to the wrong rate structure for what you're looking to build out. So if you are building out an online travel agent rate, you will not find it here in this existing rate type when your radio button is selected to direct rate. And vice versa, if you're building out a direct rate, you won't find it here in the OTA rate structure. So it is important to note what rate structure you're going ahead and building. And if you have any questions or concerns, that rate icon that I showed you earlier and the rate types will allow you to view and edit those existing ones and validate the structure there. So as we go through, we can go ahead and select our OTA rate and best available rate, just like what we did before. And in this instance here, we have our rate type, or excuse me, room type. And what we can do is, just like Lindsay said, select a room type or multiple room types, depending on if it's going to be the same rate amount for that new time frame. So if I go through and select my 1-bedroom cottage, we'll go ahead and proceed into our rate period. And if I'm not sure what I've done thus far, I'm wondering at this point, why don't I see that newly created summer 2024 rate period?
Ooh,
Lindsay,
I
any
know.
idea? Oh, chiming in already.
I
love it.
know. So the reason we're not seeing that rate period is because it has already been allocated out utilizing that rate type. So the example that we just showed you was utilizing the best available rate type for that specific category, and it's acting kind of like a checklist. So this way, you don't have duplicates by accident, right? It's where the system is actually smart enough to help you make sure you're staying on track.
That's a nice fail-safe, I guess. So if I've already created it here for 2024 summer, I don't see it here, then I can go back by clicking previous, and maybe select some other room type, like our 2-bedroom unit. And we'll go ahead and now see that unit. So yep, that's exactly right. So we'll go ahead and select that rate period, and we'll go ahead into our fourth step. And I'm moving quickly. I don't really think of it too much. I am creating a new rate table, and for whatever reason, just not remembering of all the features that we just talked about by using the create from existing, and I go ahead and I save this. So we're going to create the rate lookup for you, but if you notice, there's some things missing that came along with that previous rate table that we created with Lindsay. Things like our dynamic pricing rules, those aren't here. Our package rule, our deposit, and additional person pricing is also missing. So if this has ever occurred to you, it can be a little bit of a process to match it up to how it should be. So just be cognizant when you go through and select that specific radio bubble in step number 4, that if there's another rate table that you want to take all of these rules and use for this new rate table, make sure you're using that create new based off of existing, or else you'd get in a predicament like myself. And now I've got to go back and figure out, well, what's the deposit rule? What's my additional person pricing, and filling all this in manually, which can be quite time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I would advise as you go through and utilize the rate wizard, because once I've gone through and created it, even if I exit from here, you can see in my 2-bedroom cottage and my best available rate, it's there. So as soon as you proceed in that step number 4, it saves that rate lookup, even if it's wrong. So if you've mistakenly done it inadvertently and you want to go ahead and redo it, you couldn't reuse that 2024 summer timeframe without maybe getting rid of that rate lookup that we've created in error. So as long as this isn't being used in a reservation, you can definitely delete this and then go through the rate wizard a second time, selecting the appropriate option in step number 4. Just a few
Awesome.
things we see from time to time.
Nice. So Josh, I actually have a question for you. And it's probably a question that a couple other people here are thinking. But I know that there's some super fun things that you can do in the rate manager. Do you have any insider tips or tricks that you can share with us?
I don't know if they'd be insider tips or tricks, but there is some options that are easy enough to update from the rate manager once we've gone through and created rates for that, let's say, new time frame or any of your existing time frames where you have a rate. So if we move ahead in time, maybe to that summer time frame, and I'll use the 4th of July as an example here. So normally during the summer, we would charge this inflated rate, right? $225 and $275 like we created. But I believe that I can get a little bit more money for certain days around the 4th of July. And with it falling on a Thursday this year, how early could I start charging more? Well, one way you can go ahead and handle this scenario is by using your mouse and right-clicking on any of these given days, like July 2nd, where we can override the base rate. We have the ability here, and again, this is a security profile setting, so check with your system administrator if you don't have this ability. But you'll be able to set a date range similar to that rate period where you want to enact this updated rate. Now, the nice thing is you get to plug in that rate amount for those days. Let's say we want to go up to $250 on the 2nd and 3rd of July. We can easily go through, complete that rate override as it's called, and you'll notice that it appears in red. And anytime that you see red in this rate manager chart, it means that someone has gone through and altered the rate to something different than what you would see against the rate table. And that's generally what we see here with those rate values in black. Now, there are other ways that you can adjust the rate and do this in bulk a little bit more if needed to. You can see that this is only impacted my 1-bedroom cottage and just my best available rate. If I do have derived rates, in this case, my OTA rate is equal to, you can see it's also gone up that $25 where we have the rate override. So your derived rates will also update anytime you do that rate override. And if we find that, I can't get 250 for Tuesday, I can easily clear that going back to the expected rate table amount with all of your dynamic pricing rules and so forth. Or we can go through and maybe adjust and say, well, I do need to increase it for other days, and we can do it individually, right-clicking and going up as high as we'd like. So you have full access to this. And anytime that rates are changed here, if you're connected to an online channel or if you're connected to our internet booking engine, those rates will update immediately. The other nice thing you can do, which sometimes is easier than editing the rate table and adding in midnight stay restrictions, because that does affect all dates within that date range, is to go ahead and utilize another restriction. So we'll go back to here this Tuesday, July 2nd, where we do not have any sort of requirement to stay more than a single night. But we want to change that because we don't want people coming and going around the 4th of July. We'd actually want them, if they're coming in on Tuesday, maybe to stay 4 nights. So if we right click, instead of overriding the base rate or editing that rate table, we can actually override our minimum nights. And this allows us to go ahead and similar set a date range if we want to do this for more than a single day. And we can go ahead and plug in our 4 nights required on a Tuesday. And it won't be as obvious that you have a minimum night stay restriction on any of these nights unless you go ahead and hover over and you can see what we call the data window. It might be similar to the booking chart data window, except different information, more along the lines of the rate amount and not a reservation. But in red, most of the way down there, if you can see, a little small, it says minimum nights on arrival, and it's in red, and it shows as 4. So again, if this is ever updated, this immediately updates to your internet booking engine and is sent out to any of your connected online channels where this rate is being published. And there are plenty of more options here. If we wanted to, we can go through and take a look at this icon at the very top here, the control panel. We won't have time to talk about it today. This is like a whole webinar in itself, so keep your eyes peeled for future webinar on the control panel and the wealth of restrictions that are available to you within there to update rates, change your availability, enact minimum night stay restrictions, a whole wealth of things.
The control panel is pretty awesome. So, Josh, shockingly enough, I have yet another question for you. But what would you suggest be the best way for someone to, say, double check their work when setting rates? And, after a while, you kind of go cross-eyed and it can be overwhelming and all of that. So how would we kind of double check and be like, oh, yeah, we got it right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If you didn't want to go through and kind of look at this chart and look cell by cell on each of your different room types, and you couldn't find a good rate view that made sense to you, I think the most obvious way would be just make a reservation, right? So there's a lot of ways you can create a reservation in the system. Depending on your operations, you might just click the plus button. You might have an interactive map in play. You might use our booking chart or maybe the availability chart. But the one that I prefer is probably the quote screen. So we'll just jump into the quote screen and quickly create a reservation and just kind of make sure that with this new 2024 time frame, and we'll go through into sometime in June. Actually, you know what, since we did that July time frame, let's actually use that as the example. We'll go ahead and say that this reservation wants to stay for 5 nights, coming in July 7th. And we'll go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and either select from a rate type that I know that that client might be eligible for. And in that case, we worked with the best available rate. So that's the one we could select from. If you choose to, you can always segment it down and look at just a specific room type. If you have identified that, you know what, these folks are requesting this room type, or we believe that this would work best for their party. So it just depends on how you use this quote screen, but it's either or, not both. I'll just go ahead and leave it as the best available, and I'll click Get Quote.
And I agree with you, Josh. This quick quote really is one of the best ways to double check.
Yeah, and it's nice here within this screen because you're able to go ahead and see a few things. And right here, you can see here's our 1-bedroom cottage. And as I hover over it, this is going to be that long description. So it's nice to see there if you don't know the property as well. And you can see that the restriction we put in for the 4-night minimum just on our 1-bedroom cottage, you can see that display here as well. So that from the booking chart, you might not see those minimum nights. Nice to see that here. And if you'd like, you can go ahead and actually look from a map now from here, or even see some photos on these room types if you're not sure of the property. So they've added a few things here in the quote screen. It's nice. I'll just quickly select one of these available units and proceed to a booking. And we'll go ahead and plug in some guests. We'll go ahead and add them to the reservation quickly, and we will save it just like normal. And what we are able to see is everything that we built in that last step of the rate. Excuse me. And as you can see, we've got our base rate, we've got our package component, we've got our corresponding tax, and total rate along with deposit request. So if we went through and were ever to take this deposit, it'll go ahead and offset these charges we have posted. So this might vary depending on your settings within your database. So if you do post the create rate on reservation creation, it's kind of what you can see, since this is what the database is using at the moment.
Awesome. So with this reservation, we've posted all of the charges to the account at the time of the reservation being created. But I feel like that's kind of a lot of work, right? Like if something happens and we have to cancel, or maybe they just don't show up. So isn't there maybe a way we could fix that, Josh?
Yeah, there is an option. Historically, if you needed to know the amount due upon arrival and you took some deposit, maybe you found this option to be useful, where if they did take the $10 deposit, it might show the guest folio balance is $14.74.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have cancellations and you have things like that, modifications, it's a lot more work to void those transactions that have been already posted to this reservation account, or as it's labeled here, the guest folio. So the option that is somewhat newer, but been around a little bit, is called projected balance. And maybe you could cover a little bit about that and talk us through what that might look like or how that might work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the projected balance. It was a newer feature when I was at a property, and it saved a lot of time. So yeah, let's talk about how we can enable that projected balance. So within the sidebar, that blue sidebar menu of our screen on the far left-hand side, within our setup menu, we have an option that will direct you to the accounting. And from accounting, we would want to go into our accounting options. And from accounting options, we have a account screen. Now, at the very, very bottom, you'll see that there's an option that says projected balance, and the little box for that is ticked. So if we tick this box, and Josh will highlight that for you here so that it shows and stands out. So when we tick this box, what it essentially is going to do is display a projected amount. So with the previous reservation, as we were looking at, we had a grand total, or a total rate of X amount of dollars. Now, when we activate this, it will look just like what you see here. So the accounts section of your screen, We can see that our total rate there is $1,232. The deposit rule for this example is $10. And down below in our guest folio, we can see where that $10 credit is actively sitting on the account because it's a payment we have taken prior to the arrival date of this reservation, thus leaving the projected balance at check-in to be $1,222. It does the math, it does all the hard things for you. So if this is something that you would like to enable on your property, maybe you're not utilizing this and you're seeing the value in it, we can actually walk you through the steps to update. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. Again, we're still in our setup menu. We're under the account screen, and we're going to navigate from the account screen down to rate and rent options. Now you'll notice we like tick boxes around here, and on the right hand side we've got 5 of them. So box number 4 is on res creation. Once you untick that box, it will remove the postings of those reservations when the reservations are created and work much better for you. Again, when you have reservations that maybe need to be canceled, maybe a no-show, maybe something else happened, right? It just saves you a little bit of extra time from having to void off charges, post this, post that. It just makes your life behind the desk a little bit easier. So if these are some settings that maybe you want to have adjusted, but you don't feel comfortable doing it on your own, that's totally fine. Our amazing support team is here to back you 24/7. Or you can always reach out to your account manager for more assistance with your rates. So how do you contact these people? Well, you can contact our support team at 858-427-1200, or you can reach out via email to your account manager at whatever their email address is. So, Josh,
All right.
What do you think?
Well, I think we are just about close to time, but we do have a few minutes, I think. So does anyone have any questions that hasn't already been addressed in our chat? We've got a few assistants here helping us out from our team. Thank you very much for those of you who have been answering on the fly. But if you do have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if we don't get to them, we can definitely go ahead and follow up via email along with any recording.
Absolutely. And I do want to just shout this out to everyone, just in case you didn't know. But if you haven't, get ready for busy season. Brush up on those RMS skills. We will be offering an RMS spring training special where you can purchase 2 reservation or rate training sessions and get 1 for free. So if this is something that has piqued your interest, you think that it's going to help bring you a lot of value and help boost that revenue, because who doesn't want more money? Reach out to your account managers and let them know, and they will gladly get you signed up for that.
Perfect. We also do have a new RMS University platform that you should all be hearing about in the near future. So look for some information coming soon on that. And we did have a question around the projected balance setting, around whether or not it was something that could be enabled today and any existing reservation in the system would automatically have that value sitting in the account screen. Any idea, Lindsay, if that's going to go ahead and affect existing reservations?
So it should. You may have to log out of the system and then log back in. But yeah, once you change that setting, it is a set it from this moment forward and moving forward. So, excuse me, existing reservations. I misread the question. So existing reservations, it may not update on, but it would impact any reservations that were made after that setting had been changed.
If you do have some questions on it, it's a great opportunity to go ahead and check with the support team. If you have any concerns with the projected balance that you are seeing once you enable it. So just let our team know if you have anything there. But in regards to the other question around it, and it would show kind of in these brackets just to the right of the current account balance as of the day in which you open that account. So if they have an advance deposit, it might show as a negative number. If they're maybe checked in and you haven't collected payment, maybe it's a positive number. But the projected balance will take into account all payments made, all reservation rate, taxes, packages, requirements, additional charges, all that kind of stuff adds into that calculation. So we're expecting it to match, whether it's before the reservation, whether it's while the reservation's in house, or even after it departs. We got maybe a minute or two. Any other questions from anyone? Well, Lindsay, thanks for taking some time, and obviously everyone who joined today, thank you for your time. Hopefully everyone learned a little bit, and if not, hopefully a good refresher, and just means that you're pretty darn good with the rates thus far. But if you do need any assistance, if you have any questions, our team is always available. We've got the support line, and we also have our learning services team here. So if you need any one-on-one training around how to build out your rates or specific things that are changing in your rates and want some recommendations or someone there to guide, just let the account managers know and they can get with you on scheduling a session with someone from the team. But thank you very much, everyone who joined us today.
Thank you,
And
Josh.
we look forward to seeing everyone next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thank you.